Welcome to Strategy Talk, where the authors and editors discuss news and events with a splash of history. Our host today is Dan Masterson. Joining him is Jim Dunnigan, well-known military author and the Dean of Wargaming. Also, joining today's show is columnist and author retired Colonel Austin Bay.
Welcome, Austin and Jim. Thought we'd talk a little bit about what's going to happen after the U.S. elections with their foreign policy. What effects will Donald Trump have on foreign policy for the U.S. as he comes back into office, Jim?
Well, he's going to do things that were supposed to have been done before. Mr. Biden, President Biden, after he's still president, had a rather pro-Iran attitude, which with the Iranians we have today is the wrong approach. The current Iranian government is very aggressive. It is run by a bunch of religious maniacs. It's basically a religious dictatorship. And this kind of government never accomplishes much except a lot of pain for its neighbors. Okay, next.
Whoops, sorry. I lost my...
So that's what Jim said is good. You just need to cut out this dead air. You know?
Right. My AI program does that pretty much automatically.
Okay.
So, Austin, what do you think the effects of a change in administration are going to be?
Let's just pick up on what Jim said and go to what was a major Trump administration foreign policy initiative, and Trump won. Is for the first Trump administration, and that was the Abraham Accords. Now, I think everybody listening on this will remember that, know about it. It does get discussed. That was the name for a encouraging, normalizing relations, rapprochement being the fancy word, but that it's the right word, between Israel and its Arab neighbors, and what sometimes we've called, the Arab traders, Traders, with like the UAE. They've been in the trading business for 4 millennia, maybe. The Arabs were in the UAE, and the Gulf Arabs. Now, many of the petro-Arab nations. You'd already seen bilateral relationships develop between Jordan and Egypt over the years, but the concept behind the Abraham Accords is, hey, you Israelis and Arab nations, and UAE was one of the first ones to sign on. Bahrain came along, Morocco, even Sudan, prior to it falling into chaos again with a new civil war. And you had Kuwait interested, and even Saudi Arabia, the big fish. It was, I'll get a little ahead on this part. In the summer of 2023, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, started teasing media, global media, his own media, but a really famous interview now with Bret Baier of Fox News about, I could be, I might be, should be, perhaps we will be discussing aspects of the Abraham Accords, meaning that he saw the developmental component of it, because in the background was business transactions, which really already go on between Israel and UAE. It's out in the open, but the Saudis as well, and in deep background defense cooperation, which gets back to what the Trump initiative was about. It was to stop Iran. The Iranians threaten the Gulf Arabs constantly. They threaten Israel. Actually, the Iranian regime, as Jim described it, is at war with the world. It's at war with everybody. They're the Islamic revolutionary movement of the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, and it is a polite way of putting it. It's nuts, aggressive, corrupt, and violent. And the Arabs know that they're threatened by it. Even plays off of a long-term enmity, because who are the Iranians? It means Aryan. They say they're the Aryans, and they dislike all the Semites. Arabs and Jews are Semites, which goes back to the Abraham Accords. Semitic origin of Arabs and Jews. And that very, very clever name put on what a pretty complex diplomatic operation. what it did was say you have more than in common than having 20th and 21st century conflicts, which was a heck of a message. I mean, the religious Muslims get it, and religious Jews get it, and individuals who are familiar with the Bible stories, Dan, they get it. But then here it was, you had the United States and its prestige on the line, active engagement involving the office of the U.S. president because of one of his sons-in-laws was in charge of the maneuvering. That was Jared Kushner. And then the last piece, which is classic Trump in foreign policy, was economic transactions.
You have lost Austin.
I'm sorry, Jim, what?
I lost everyone?
No.
We're still going.
Oh, come on.
Okay. Well, I'll pick it up on the transactions down.
Transactionalism. My connection lost. I was shut out. That was on my end. If the connection lost.
Okay, Jim. All I've done is talk about the components on them on the last
part.
Part.
Okay. As long as.
All right. I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up there. It's in other words, economic benefits. Trump transactional diplomacy. Well, he's looking at it. We can do this for you. You can do this for us. We mutually benefit. But here they were trying to, with the transactionalism between Israel and its neighbors. They could point to the successes Jordan and Egypt had in dealing with the Israelis. And I think that's going to come back, Dan. I certainly hope it does. I did a column on it this week that even has some more of the details and looks at the bad aspects of the Obama administration Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was supposed to stop the nuclear program, and the Ayatollahs got paid billions, and what they do with it, as Jim Dunnigan points out, spin it on making war and on terrorism. That Trump administration is going to stop that.
On top of that, Jim, they have two allies. They have the Christian Russians and I don't know what religion the North Koreans have, and those are their allies. A strange trio, three outcasts, united to, as Austin puts it, destroy the world.
To wage war on the world, with the intent for them dominating it. That's the way I'd put it.
I guess one of the questions is, we've had all this stuff going on with the Houthis down in the Red Sea. What will the Trump's reaction be to that? Because he said he doesn't want to pull us into any other wars, but we've got this other stuff that is going on.
Well, a funny thing happened when the Houthis found out that the Trump had been elected. They said, "Oh no, we're stopping. We're not going to shoot at anything in the Red Sea anymore. We want to make peace." That was odd, but effective. I mean, Trump apparently, as Austin was pointing out, is a no-nonsense guy. He's going to do something, and the Houthis anticipated that. And they have stopped firing at ships in the Red Sea and basically said, "Oh, no, we want to be peaceful." Amazing. Is there anything Trump can't do?
Well, that's part of the perception by our adversaries of Trump's personality. Yeah, he's not going to go around being a warmonger, Dan. He's suspicious of military involvement because it's a waste of time, lives, treasure, and the like. But the whole process of lack of leadership is the way to put it. The Biden administration, vis-a-vis the Houthis, is ridiculous. Letting them shoot missiles at U.S. Navy warships in a narrow sea, and we played it defensively for several months, really, and then finally the U.S. did what is something I know I brought this up on a couple of strategy talks. What would I do or recommend about the Houthis? Bring in the heavy bombers, stand off, drop those long gliding JDAMs, and then turn those two valleys they were shooting out of into dust bowls for about 2 weeks, and then we see what survived. We sort of did that, and it silenced a lot of it. Didn't knock it all out. You're not going to get it all. But it sure did wake them up to see this is what the United States can do if we provoke the United States. But that should have been the first lesson for the Biden administration, and it was the last one. Jim's brought up the component of Trump's personality and no-nonsense guy. That's a great way to explain it. He's going to put up with that. And allowing proxy Iranian armies to shoot at American soldiers and Marines as they went on in Iraq, and allowing them to shoot at the U.S. Navy and not responding with convincing force. That's what the Biden administration did. No convincing force. Trump has a convincing personality that he's going to use convincing force, and it scared him.
Trump said he was going to stop wars. And
Right.
by that, he meant, just do whatever it takes to get them to stop. And if that means simply making a credible threat to anyone who's going to continue shooting, that stops wars. And I think that's what he meant, and that's what he's going to do. In fact, we've already seen it with the Houthis. They say, okay, this is a guy you don't want to mess around with. We could, with when Biden was in charge, we could play around, and Biden really wouldn't do anything. Trump says he will do something, and we're not going to test him. I think
Look,
it's going to work.
Have either of you heard who is the possibility for defense? It'll be nice to get rid of that clown that's in there right now.
Oh, that clown is as good as gone. No, I don't know who he has named yet. He's in the process of selecting people to fill his cabinet. And I think he's going to get a much better bunch than Biden currently has. I think he's guaranteed to do it because you can't do much worse.
Right.
I saw a clip on TV, Dan, where they were talking about filling out Trump's cabinet. And when they were talking about SecDef, it showed Tom Cotton and another senator walking down a hallway. And my own preferences, I think Senator Cotton should stay in the Senate, but does he have the chops to be a great SecDef? Yes, he does. And there's the kind of classy, talent, intelligent, also schooled diplomat, but who's an airborne ranger infantry officer. Was his background, and he knows it from the bottom up, and he certainly knows it from the strategic level. So that's the kind of talent that Trump can draw on. Don't want to be misunderstood. That clip didn't use Senator Cotton's name, and I forget who the other senator was in the little shot. But he's got Cotton has to be on Trump's list. That's right.
From what I've heard, he is on his list, but he immediately came back when that surfaced, and he said no, he wants to be involved in the Senate leadership. So,
well, I hadn't heard that, Dan, but see, that makes sense because he really is somebody who contributes to the congressional leadership on his defense and also economic common sense. It's okay, but he's an example of somebody who could do it.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, if Trump makes a lot of good moves and gets good results with taking people like Cotton and talking them into being his Secretary of Defense, he's going to basically win put a lot of Republicans in office during the next couple of elections. So the net result will be a lot of people to replace Cotton in the Senate. And I think the Republicans already have a majority in the Senate.
Right.
Now they got to work on the House, and those elections are every 2 years. So if you basically start kicking butt right away, a lot of these Republican candidates for the House are going to say, "Look, this is what we bring to the table. You want more of it? Elect us."
Well, there are a number. Mike Pompeo, who's former Secretary of State, first in his class at West Point, and he's got the defense credentials. I don't know that he would want it, but I've named two people that with absolutely outstanding credentials, and the Republican bench for SecDef and SecState is extremely deep. That's the thing.
Well, I am real interested to see what the impact will be on military leadership overall. I've sat back and watched for the last 4 years.
It can't go any place but up.
Yeah, it has been
a real
Can I quote
disaster.
you? Can I quote you, Jim?
Yes.
Can't go. I want to quote.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get away from the social engineering they're trying to do and other. They just spend a lot of time on things that are not part of the national defense realm, and hopefully some of that will get cleaned up.
Well, military
But
recruiters have reported that the people walking in the door when they sign up are up over 30% so far.
that,
So that's a pretty quick response. It's good, like you're pointing out. Once you get a rational, military leadership and a rational management of the military, a lot more young men and women are willing to get in there and sign up. And that's going to make a big difference. I mean, the quality of the American military is taking a huge shot in the arm, with with the Trump administration coming in. And people will say down the line, "Oh, it's a miracle." No, it was Donald Trump.
There's another senator that I think would make an outstanding Secretary of Defense, Dan, and that's Roger Wicker of Mississippi. But the reason I would like to see him stay in the Senate is he actually has a plan, an operation for fixing the Navy's hull shortage of ships, and also really revitalizing the entire U.S. Navy. And it's not something that some politician thought of, just to get in the headlines. It's something he knows, works on constantly, and has been talking about for 10 or 12 years. Does it benefit Mississippi? Yeah, Mississippi down in Gulfport, they have one of the biggest Navy shipyards building U.S. ships. But he looks at it from an entire, not just U.S. perspective, but U.S. and allied perspective. And that's why I'm giving this push on him. The thing is, I've been reading his stuff for years, and it's like, gee, I'm glad he's in U.S. government. It's there's an example of somebody who doesn't get a lot of press.
Here's another radical move, which I've always wondered about. Why not subcontract American shipbuilding to foreign shipyards like the Japanese? They are one of the major shipbuilders in the world, second only to China. And China's advantage is that they build so many ships that they easily can build a lot of good warships, which is what they're doing. I mean, they have a lot of Chinese destroyers which look suspiciously like the Burks, and that's probably no accident. But by having, and of course, you get howls from the Congress and the Senate about having our ships built overseas, loss of jobs and what have you. But if you want a strong fleet, you have to build them somewhere. You can improve production down in Mississippi, but if you want to really make a difference, I mean, they're talking about expanding the fleet to over 300 ships in the next 10 years. Well, if it's during wartime, there'd be no question. If an ally wouldn't be, in this case it would be Japan, is willing to help us build ships, then my God, do it. Well, why don't you just take a wartime mentality and get those ships built wherever they can be built as quickly as they can be built?
Well, Jim, I had a column basically making that argument. I wrote about 3 months ago, talking about South Korea and Japan. But here is the point that comes up. Really. It's can't remember the exact date, but it's sometime between now and May of this year. I actually had two that touched on that, using our allies, South Korea and Japan, specifically because of their shipbuilding capacity. But the question there is, that's really forward. They're in range of Chinese suppression with Chinese conventional missile and aircraft delivered bombs and be smashed. The benefit of having them here in the U.S., or at least more here in the U.S., is that we have some distance between us and them. But using South Korea and Japan, co-building some things makes a ton of sense because they make good ships and they're trustworthy allies. They depend on us. We're their strategic depth. But we need really good shipbuilding facilities here in the U.S. And Jim's written about it for years. I gave you a name of a senator that's been behind revitalizing it, but Wicker's not the only one. It's just so evident that we lost all this shipbuilding capacity, and it was all being offshored. Well, offshored. We need it reshored.
But if you want to get the fleet rebuilt quickly, you have South Korea and Japan yards as well as ours. We'd have that new fleet, within 5 years.
Well, you're right.
But right now, before Trump got elected, it looked like it was going to take never. We were never going to get the fleet we wanted because, all we had was our one set of poorly managed American yards and nothing else. But like you say, if we co-produce with our best Pacific allies, South Korea and Japan, we'll have our new fleet in no time at all. I mean, this is national defense we're talking about, not keeping jobs, in Mississippi. They can howl all they want, but they're still getting plenty of work.
Well,
But America needs more ships.
let me say this: Wicker's not about keeping jobs in Mississippi. I mean, he's for that because but he's about trying to rebuild the U.S. Navy effectively, and that has been. Here I sound like I'm a campaign speech for him. I'm not. I've read his stuff, and it's this. It's like this guy's a national asset. Now he's not the only one. He just happens to be a senator. What Jim is saying, Dan, makes it's complete common sense because there are a lot of shipbuilding capacity that Japan and South Korea have that actually they're not using. They could use the ships. So there is an interim answer, as they say.
So I'd like to turn to one more topic before we wrap this all up. President Zelensky had been reaching out to Trump prior to the election. What is the Trump administration going to do to help wind down the Ukrainian conflict?
Well, all Zelensky will accept is total victory. And indeed, in his country, I mean, there's some willingness to accept a compromise and give up 25% of their territory. But most Ukrainians want it all back. It's theirs. They should have it. They have the backing of the United States and the NATO nations. Why can't they? Putin, of course, says no, 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 no. But, Putin doesn't run the world. And he's already suffering enormously. I mean, they've had to bring in 10,000 North Korean troops as replacements because they've lost so many soldiers. They've been recruiting troops in Central Asia, wherever they can find them. Russia has basically run out of soldiers. They've run out of tanks. All their tanks have been destroyed. I mean, the number of tanks and antiques they threw in there, the T-64s last year, boom, 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 they're all gone. The Ukrainians are running a counteroffensive, which they're winning. I mean, they invaded Kursk province in Russia, and they're still there. In fact, that's where the Russians sent the North Koreans to try to. They got North Korean soldiers trying to push Ukrainian soldiers out of Russian territory. You never imagined it would get that weird.
Dan,
I guess the North Koreans are the new Cossacks.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. They've already had a bunch of them trying to defect. A Cossack would never defect.
Why would you insult? Why would you insult Cossacks, Dan?
Yeah, I need to take that back. That was a horrible analogy.
I'd like to make a comment on this. All right. One of the things I found most disturbing from the Republican side during the election season is the denigration of Ukraine's effort and the easy dismissal, saying, "Oh, they're all crooked," and it's an endless war and the like. The Ukrainian cause is a just cause because, as Jim's pointing out, they were invaded. They didn't start it, and as a matter of fact, the strategic vacuum created was encouraged by the United States, the Clinton administration, and the United Kingdom with that Budapest Accord where the Ukrainians gave up their nukes in exchange for absolute territorial guarantees from Russia. And look what happened. The Russians
you
got invaded.
You can't trust the Russians. I mean, that goes without saying. The thing is, the Americans and the Britons believed that you could trust the Russians. They didn't really consult the Ukrainians. They would tell you, you cannot trust the Russians. No way. No how.
Complete agreement. And so, the Ukrainians get a vote, and look how they voted. They voted, we don't want the Russians here, and we want to win. Now, we can't backtrack history, but one of the real problems that the Ukrainians face is the Biden administration saying, oh, we're putting limits on this. Oh, slow walking, getting them F-16s, can't attack targets in Russia. Well, they're attacking them now. And it was always, oh, we don't want to escalate. The Russians escalated the moment they launched an outright assault to try to take Kiev. And they escalated when they took Crimea. So here's then the last thing I'll say on this, and I'm going to give a speech. is look at the change in the map in Europe since 2014. Sweden and Finland are in NATO. The Swiss have joined that European Airspace Defense Consortium because they know, nukes flying over. They want to be in there with the interceptors, anti-ballistic missiles. Suddenly you see these Western so-called neutrals, even though they were never really neutral. They certainly talked it. Now they're members of NATO. And that is a blow to Russia that is Putin's fault. Now, how does it translate into making peace in Ukraine now? It really doesn't, not to Russia's benefit. What he's got is he's got a radicalized Western Europe, at least an anti-Russian Western Europe. And that's a huge loss for the Russians. I don't know how Trump's going to stop the war. He can stop it, I guess, by denying Ukraine weapons. But that's not the just solution here. So I'll leave it at that. Just remember, as Jim says, Russia's lost a lot economically and militarily, but they've lost strategically as well. I don't know how you stop the shooting, though, because the Ukrainians say, we don't want them here.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. And I'm sure there's going to be lots to talk about over the next 4 years. We'll see you next time, gentlemen.
Okay, take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.